I want you to imagine a man alone with a question he cannot say out loud, not because he has no words, but because the words feel too heavy. One day, something that used to feel natural stops feeling certain. An erection that once came without thinking now feels like something he has to monitor, measure, and prove. And in that silence, before he talks to a doctor, before he tells a partner, before he even understands what is happening, shame arrives first. He looks at himself and wonders, what changed in me? He wonders if he is broken. He wonders if he is weak. He wonders if something private has damaged something permanent. And that is where this discovery begins, not with judgment, not with fear, but with a quiet question. What if the problem is not that your body has betrayed you, but that your body has learned a pattern you never stopped to examine? When I first heard men talk about this, they almost never began with science. They began with embarrassment. They remembered the moment their confidence disappeared. They remembered lying next to someone wanting to be present, wanting to respond, wanting the body to follow the emotion. But instead, their mind stepped in like a guard at the door. Is it working? Is it enough? Is she noticing? What if it fails again? And the more they watched, the less they felt. The more they checked, the more distant the body became. That is the cruel part of this cycle. The body may be trying to respond, but the mind is no longer participating in intimacy. It is supervising it. And this is why we have to be careful with the title. If you masturbate standing up, this does not mean you caused erectile dysfunction by one act. It does not mean you are dirty, damaged, or doomed. Masturbation by itself is not the simple villain people are often told to fear. Erections are more complex than that. They involve blood flow, hormones, nerves, emotional safety, stress levels, sleep, confidence, medications, relationship tension, depression, anxiety, and the way the brain directs attention toward arousal. But there is a mistake some men make without realizing it. Not the existence of the habit, but the repetition of a very specific pattern. Same posture, same pressure, same tension, same speed, same mental escape, same private conditions, repeated until the nervous system begins to associate arousal with that narrow script. And then real intimacy arrives, and real intimacy is different. It is slower. It has emotion inside it. It has another person, another rhythm, another kind of pressure. It has eye contact, vulnerability, unpredictability, and the possibility of being seen. Standing alone, the body may have learned control through tension. In intimacy, the body may need relaxation. Standing alone, the mind may be chasing a quick result. In intimacy, the mind may need presence. Standing alone, the body may respond to a familiar physical setup. In intimacy, it is asked to respond to connection. And for some men, that gap becomes terrifying. At first, he does not understand it as conditioning. He understands it as failure. He remembers the private habit. Then he notices the fear. Then comes the failed attempt. Then the shame. Then the insecurity. And finally, the checking. He starts testing himself before anything even happens. He checks in the morning. He checks in the shower. He checks when he is alone. He checks when he is with someone. And every check carries the same hidden question. Will it work this time? But desire does not grow well under interrogation. Arousal does not respond well when it feels like a test. The body was designed for sensation, emotion, safety, and attention. But now attention has turned into surveillance. This is the loop many men hide. they do not talk about it because they think they are the only ones. They think a real man should not have to ask these questions. They think silence protects them, when silence is often what tightens the knot. And the more they hide, the more the problem becomes part of their identity. A single difficult night becomes a prediction. A moment of anxiety becomes a diagnosis in their own mind. A temporary response becomes a permanent fear. And soon, the man is not just facing erection trouble. He is facing the fear of erection trouble. That second layer is often what keeps the cycle alive. We left a practical guide in the first link in the description so you can access it quickly, click, and see. It was created for men living with dysfunction, shame, and insecurity who want to understand this pattern calmly and start rebuilding control without panic. Because the real question is not, did one private act ruin me? The better question is, has my body adapted to something I never questioned? If the body repeatedly learns arousal under high tension, fixed posture, tight muscular control, rushed breathing, or mental escape, then it may struggle when the situation changes. And if the mind adds fear on top of that, the nervous system can shift from desire into defense. Instead of opening into sensation, the body prepares for evaluation. Instead of receiving intimacy, the mind starts trying to manage a performance. That is not weakness. That is learning. And what has been learned can often be retrained. I want you to see this without humiliation. A man standing alone in a private habit may never realize how much tension he is carrying in his abdomen, his legs, his hips, his breathing, his jaw, even his thoughts. He may not realize that he has built arousal around control instead of connection. He may not realize that he is teaching the body again and again. This is the condition where response happens. And when the condition is absent, he panics. But panic does not prove damage. Panic often proves that the body feels unsafe, watched, pressured, and disconnected. This is where understanding becomes a relief. Because if erectile dysfunction can involve physical and psychological causes, then the answer should not be shame. It should be awareness. Sometimes the issue is blood flow. Sometimes it is hormones. Sometimes it is medication. Sometimes it is stress, depression, anxiety, exhaustion, relationship conflict, or fear after one bad experience. Sometimes it is a mix of body and mind, and when symptoms persist, when they cause distress, when they appear often, a medical evaluation is not something to fear. It is an act of maturity. It is how a man stops guessing in the dark. But there is another part many men can begin to notice immediately: the pressure they put on themselves. The more a man demands proof from his body, the more distant his body may feel. The more he tries to force confidence, the more unnatural intimacy becomes. Confidence is not rebuilt by threatening the body. It is rebuilt by reducing fear, reducing urgency, rebuilding sensitivity, calming the nervous system, becoming aware of repeated habits, and learning to return attention to the present moment instead of the scoreboard in the mind. And that is the mistake hidden inside the habit. It is not that standing up once destroyed anything. It is that repetition can quietly train expectation. It is that the body may become loyal to a narrow pattern while the man assumes it should automatically perform anywhere, anytime, under any emotional pressure. But the body is not a machine. It is responsive. It listens to stress. It listens to shame. It listens to fatigue. It listens to whether the man feels safe or judged. It listens to the story he tells himself before intimacy begins. So, if you have been asking, why does it work alone but not when it matters? Stop using that question as a weapon against yourself. There may be information inside it. Alone, there may be no emotional risk. Alone, there may be a familiar posture. Alone, there may be no fear of disappointing someone. Alone, the mind may feel in control. With another person, the heart is involved. The fear of being seen is involved. The pressure to prove masculinity is involved. And suddenly, the body is asked not only to respond, but to respond while carrying the weight of your identity. That is too much weight for one moment. A man begins to change when he stops treating the body like an enemy and starts studying the pattern like a witness. He notices where tension appears. He notices whether he rushes. He notices whether he is breathing or holding his breath. He notices whether intimacy feels like connection or like an exam. He notices whether his private habit has become the only place where he feels in control. And once he notices, he can begin to create space. Space to slow down. Space to reduce pressure. Space to rebuild trust. Space to let arousal become something he experiences, not something he commands. The guide and method are also available in the pinned comment for anyone carrying dysfunction, shame, and insecurity as a hidden burden and wanting a clearer path to understand what is happening and begin changing the pattern. The hopeful truth is that many men are not trapped forever in the first explanation their shame gave them. Shame says, "You are defective." Understanding says, "There is a pattern." Shame says, "Hide this." Understanding says, "Look at it calmly." Shame says, "Force yourself to be normal." Understanding says, "Remove the pressure, support the body, and seek help when needed." And that difference matters, because the way a man interprets what is happening can either tighten the cycle or begin to break it. When he sees the relationship between habit, anxiety, body response, and confidence, something changes. He stops believing every uncertain moment is proof of failure. He stops turning every private behavior into a moral sentence. He starts asking better questions. What conditions has my body adapted to? What fear appears before intimacy? What pressure am I carrying? What health factors have I ignored? What conversation have I avoided? What would happen if I approached this with patience instead of panic? That is where control begins to return. Not the harsh control of forcing the body, but the mature control of understanding it. The control that comes from knowing when to slow down, when to breathe, when to reduce tension, when to change a habit, when to rebuild emotional safety, and when to talk to a professional instead of suffering silently. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming present again. So if this story feels close to you, do not hear it as an accusation. Hear it as a door opening. Your body may not be broken. It may be responding to stress, conditioning, fear, or something physical that deserves attention. Either way, the answer is not humiliation. The answer is clarity. And once clarity begins, hope becomes practical. You can learn the pattern. You can reduce the pressure. You can rebuild confidence. You can seek support. You can stop seeing yourself as defective and start seeing a way forward. And if this video helped you understand something you have carried in silence, subscribe to the channel, because the purpose here is not to shame men, but to bring light to the patterns they were never taught to understand. In the next videos, we will keep walking through the hidden connections between the mind, the body, confidence, intimacy, and health, so that confusion can become clarity, shame can become self-control, and insecurity can finally become hope. Factual grounding for production. The script follows current medical guidance that erectile dysfunction can involve vascular, hormonal, neurological, medication-related, emotional, lifestyle, and relationship factors. That stress, anxiety, depression, and confidence can worsen sexual response. And that masturbation frequency alone is not supported as a direct cause of ED in recent research. Preciso que expanda para 15,000 caractere. Vou manter a narração em inglês, sem dividir em capítulos e expandir com mais carga emocional, explicação didática e os dois CTAs integrados naturalmente na história. Thought for Seventeen-year-olds. Aqui está a versão expandida em inglês com tom documental, sério e emocional, chegando perto do limite de 15,000 caracteres. There is a kind of silence a man enters when something changes in his body and he does not know how to explain it. It does not begin with a diagnosis. It does not begin with a doctor. It begins in a private moment with a question he is almost afraid to ask himself. Something that used to feel automatic now feels uncertain. Something that once gave him confidence now makes him nervous before anything even happens. And the hardest part is not only the erection, the hardest part is what the mind does after it notices the change. A man may look in the mirror and say nothing, but inside he is already searching for a reason. He remembers the nights when his body responded easily. He remembers the times when he did not have to think about desire, performance, pressure, or timing. And then he remembers the moment everything became different. Maybe it happened once. Maybe it happened twice. Maybe it happened with someone he cared about. Maybe it happened when he was alone and suddenly realized he was checking his body like it was a machine that needed to prove it still worked. And from that moment, shame can become louder than truth. This is where many men make the first mistake. They think uncertainty means damage. They think one difficult experience means something permanent has happened to them. They think if their erection is not as strong, as fast, or as reliable as before, then they have lost something essential as a man. But what if the body is not betraying him? What if the body is responding to patterns it has learned in silence? What if the problem is not that he is broken, dirty, weak, or ruined, but that his nervous system has been trained under certain private conditions that do not always translate into real intimacy, real pressure, real emotion, and real presence? That question changes everything, because when we talk about erection problems, we have to be careful. Masturbation itself should not be treated like a direct and simple cause of erectile dysfunction. That would be too shallow, and for many men, it would only create more fear. Erections are complex. They involve blood flow, hormones, nerves, the brain, emotional state, stress, sleep, confidence, medications, lifestyle, anxiety, depression, relationship connection, and even the way a man interprets what is happening in the moment. Sometimes erectile dysfunction has a physical cause. Sometimes it has a psychological cause. Sometimes it is both. And sometimes the man suffers in silence because he is trying to solve a complicated human problem with shame instead of understanding. But there is a pattern that deserves attention. If a man repeatedly stimulates himself in the same position, with the same pressure, the same speed, the same body tension, the same posture, the same mental escape, the same rushed goal, and the same private environment, his body may begin to associate arousal with that exact condition. Not because the body is wrong, but because the body learns. The nervous system adapts. The brain remembers. The muscles participate. The breathing changes. The attention narrows. And little by little, arousal may become linked to a specific script. For some men, standing up becomes part of that script. The legs are tense. The hips are fixed. The abdomen tightens. The breath becomes shallow. The hand applies a certain pressure. The mind moves quickly toward release. There is no emotional risk, no partner watching, no need for vulnerability, no fear of disappointing anyone. In that private setting, the man feels in control. But intimacy is not built like that. Real intimacy has rhythm. It has another person. It has emotion. It has uncertainty. It has eye contact, touch, patience, presence, and the possibility of being truly seen. And for a man whose body has become used to a narrow private pattern, that difference can feel confusing. He may ask, why does it work alone, but not when it matters? That question can destroy confidence if he asks it with shame, but it can begin healing if he asks it with curiosity. Because maybe the body is not failing. Maybe the body has adapted. And this is where the cycle begins. First, there is the private habit. Then there is a moment of doubt. Then comes a difficult experience. Then shame enters. Then insecurity follows. Then the man starts watching his body instead of feeling his body. He goes into the next intimate moment already afraid. Before desire has time to grow, his mind is already measuring performance. Is it working? Is it strong enough? What if I lose it? What if she notices? What if this happens again? And the more he checks, the more pressure he creates. The more pressure he creates, the harder it becomes to relax. And the less relaxed he feels, the more the body struggles to respond naturally. This is not a moral failure. It is a loop. Many men are not fighting only erectile difficulty. They are fighting the fear of erectile difficulty. That fear becomes its own problem. The mind tries to protect the man from humiliation, but by constantly monitoring the body, it pulls him away from the very state that arousal needs. Arousal does not grow well under surveillance. Desire does not respond well when it feels like an exam. The body was not designed to be threatened into intimacy. It was designed to respond to safety, attention, sensation, emotion, and trust. But when a man has had one painful experience, trust becomes fragile. He may start avoiding intimacy, or he may force himself into it with panic. He may compare himself to the past. He may test himself in private. He may wake up and immediately check if everything is normal. He may watch videos, read forums, search symptoms late at night, and convince himself that he has ruined his body forever. But often, what he is really seeing is the power of fear, combined with conditioning. The body remembers the pattern, the mind remembers the failure, and together they create a cycle that feels stronger than the man himself. We left in the first link in the description a practical guide for you to access it quickly. Click and see. It was created for anyone living with dysfunction, shame, and insecurity who wants to understand this pattern calmly and begin rebuilding control without panic, because panic is usually what makes the darkness deeper. A man in panic does not observe himself clearly. He accuses himself. He attacks himself. He says, "I should not be like this." He says, "A real man would not struggle here." He says, "Something is wrong with me." And every one of those thoughts increases the emotional load. The body hears that pressure. The nervous system responds to that pressure. The brain, which plays a central role in arousal, begins to associate intimacy with danger, evaluation, and possible embarrassment. Then, even when the body could respond, the man may be too anxious to receive the response. This is why understanding matters. When a man understands that erection is not just a local event, but a whole body response, he begins to see the picture differently. The brain has to be involved. Attention has to be involved. Blood flow has to be involved. Hormones and nerves have to be involved. Emotional state has to be involved. If stress is high, if confidence is low, if sleep is poor, if depression is present, if anxiety is strong, if the relationship feels tense, if the man feels judged, or if he is carrying hidden shame, the sexual response can change. That does not mean he is weak. It means he is human, and if the issue persists, appears suddenly, becomes frequent, or causes distress, it deserves medical attention, not because he should be afraid, but because he should not suffer in silence. A doctor can help evaluate physical factors such as circulation, hormones, medications, nerve health, and general health. A qualified professional can also help when anxiety, depression, trauma, relationship conflict, or performance fear are part of the pattern. Seeking help is not the end of masculinity. It is often the beginning of clarity. But alongside medical awareness, there is also personal awareness. A man can begin by noticing the pattern without judging it. He can ask himself, do I always stimulate myself in the same posture? Do I hold tension in my legs, stomach, or hips? Do I rush? Do I depend on a very specific kind of pressure? Do I use the habit to escape stress instead of feeling the body? Do I breathe naturally, or do I tighten everything until release? Do I feel calm during intimacy, or do I feel like I am being tested? These questions are not accusations. They are clues, because the body learns through repetition. If repetition teaches the body that arousal only happens under control, tension, speed, and privacy, then real intimacy may feel unfamiliar, not impossible, just unfamiliar, and what is unfamiliar can be retrained. The danger is not one isolated act. The danger is never questioning a repeated pattern that quietly becomes the only path the body knows. Standing up, tight posture, intense pressure, rushed release, mental escape, and performance anxiety can become part of a private formula. Then, when life asks the body for something different, softness, patience, connection, emotional presence, the man may feel disconnected from himself. He may think, my body is failing me. But a better question is, has my body adapted to something I never questioned? That question removes humiliation and creates responsibility. Responsibility does not mean blame. It means possibility. If something has been conditioned, then something can often be changed. The man can reduce urgency. He can change the way he relates to his body. He can stop treating every erection like a test. He can rebuild sensitivity by becoming more present instead of more forceful. He can reduce the pressure to perform and increase the attention to sensation. He can bring more awareness to breathing, relaxation, stress, posture, and emotional state. He can stop using shame as motivation, because shame does not heal the nervous system. Shame keeps the body tense. A man who wants to recover confidence must learn to stop threatening himself. He must stop saying, "You better work." He must stop bringing fear into the bedroom before intimacy even begins. He must learn to return attention to the present moment, not to the past failure, not to the imagined future embarrassment, not to the question of whether he is still a man, but to what is actually happening now. Touch, warmth, breath, connection, safety, desire, patience. That is difficult at first because the anxious mind wants certainty. It wants a guarantee before the moment begins. It wants proof. But intimacy does not offer proof before participation. It asks for presence. And presence is exactly what performance anxiety steals. The man caught in this cycle may begin to see intimacy as a stage. He feels like he must enter, perform, prove, and succeed. But the body does not respond naturally when it feels like it is under judgment. The body needs permission. It needs time. It needs trust. It needs the mind to stop standing over it like a critic. When the mind becomes softer, the body often has more room to respond. This does not mean every case is psychological. That would be another mistake. Some erection problems are connected to cardiovascular health, diabetes, hormonal changes, medication side effects, nerve issues, alcohol use, smoking, lack of exercise, or other medical concerns. That is why a mature response includes both self-awareness and professional evaluation when needed. But even when physical factors are involved, shame still makes everything heavier. And when shame is reduced, a man is usually better able to seek help, follow guidance, and rebuild his confidence. What many men need first is not a miracle. They need a map that shows them the difference between damage and adaptation, a map that explains how anxiety can interrupt arousal, a map that helps them see why constant checking can make things worse, a map that shows them how repeated habits can shape sexual response, a map that reminds them that they are not the only one hiding this fear, and a map that points toward change without panic. Because when a man believes he is damaged, he hides. When he believes there is a pattern, he can study it. When he studies it, he can change how he responds. And when he changes how he responds, the cycle begins to lose power. Maybe the first step is simply to stop turning the body into an enemy. The erection is not a separate object that must obey under threat. It is part of a larger system. It is influenced by the heart, the blood vessels, the brain, the nerves, the breath, the emotions, the relationship, the history, the expectations, and the meaning the man gives to the moment. If he enters intimacy carrying fear, shame, and self-attack, the body may protect itself by shutting down. Not because he wants that, but because the nervous system is sensitive to pressure. And so the work begins quietly. He learns to notice tension. He learns to slow down. He learns that the goal is not to force a response, but to create the conditions where response can return. He learns that confidence is not rebuilt by proving himself once, but by reducing the fear around the experience. He learns that one difficult moment does not define him. He learns that his private habits deserve awareness, not hatred. He learns that asking for help is not weakness. He learns that masculinity is not measured by a single physical response on demand. The guide and method are also available in the pinned comment for anyone carrying dysfunction, shame, and insecurity as a hidden burden and wanting a clearer path to understand what is happening and begin changing the pattern. Because this burden becomes heavier when a man carries it alone. He may smile during the day and feel panic at night. He may act confident around friends and feel afraid with someone he loves. He may avoid relationships, avoid touch, avoid vulnerability, and convince himself that he is protecting others, when really he is protecting himself from the possibility of shame. But avoidance teaches the brain that intimacy is dangerous. Testing teaches the brain that the body is unreliable. Hiding teaches the man that he is alone. None of these create freedom. Freedom begins when the man can look at the pattern without collapsing into self-hatred. He can say, something is happening and I can understand it. He can say, my body may have learned a narrow condition and I can retrain it. He can say, anxiety may be making this worse and I can reduce pressure. He can say, there may be a physical factor and I can get evaluated. He can say, this is not the end of me. That sentence alone can soften something inside him, because hopelessness is often built from confusion. A man does not know what is happening, so he imagines the worst. He does not have language, so he uses shame. He does not have guidance, so he searches in fear. But when he understands the relationship between habit, anxiety, body response, posture, pressure, and confidence, the darkness becomes less mysterious, and what is less mysterious becomes less powerful. This is the mature truth. The body can change. The mind can learn new associations. Confidence can be rebuilt. Sensitivity can return. Pressure can be reduced. Medical issues can be evaluated. Emotional patterns can be addressed. A man can move from panic to awareness, from self-attack to responsibility, from hiding to action. Not overnight, not through a magical promise, but through a calmer relationship with his own body and a clear understanding of what has been shaping his response. So if you recognized yourself in this story, do not hear it as condemnation. Hear it as information. Do not let shame convince you that you are defective. Do not let one habit define your entire identity. Do not let one failed moment become the story of your life. Your body may be asking for attention. Your mind may be asking for safety. Your confidence may be asking to be rebuilt with patience instead of pressure. The question is not, am I ruined? The question is, what has my body learned? What is my mind afraid of? And what can I begin to change? That is where hope becomes practical. Because once a man understands the pattern, he is no longer trapped inside it in the same way. He can make different choices. He can slow the cycle before it takes control. He can stop checking and start observing. He can stop forcing and start creating safety. He can stop hiding and seek help when needed. He can stop seeing himself as a defect and start seeing himself as a man learning his own nervous system. And that is a powerful shift, from confusion to clarity, from shame to self-control, from insecurity to hope. If this video helped you see something you have been carrying in silence, subscribe to the channel. The purpose here is not to judge men, but to explain what many were never taught about the mind, the body, confidence, intimacy, and health. In the next videos, we will keep uncovering these hidden patterns with seriousness, respect, and evidence-aware guidance, so that you can understand yourself better, take care of your body with maturity, and find a real way forward.